Okey-dokey, I'm gonna go in the other room.
All
You
right.
guys can- Who else is supposed to be here in person?
John Round, and I don't know whether Jeff Koshan is gonna be virtual or here.
Okay, well, I think it's still a few minutes before.
Oh,
so
oh, yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna go in room 5 and you guys keep chatting and
thanks, as always.
you are very welcome. You're welcome, you're welcome.
Where are you in Maine, Steve?
I'm about in Kennebunk,
Okay,
headed up to Port Clyde.
all right, now where's that?
That's the western headland of Penobscot Bay. It's just past Christmas Cove and Booth Bay and all those things.
All right, good.
Oh, you're gonna be the test person?
Mr. Round?
Very quiet room.
uh,
Oh, we're cranked up here. Let's put ourselves out. How we doing, Peter? It's like this look like a.
A big committee, you might,
Geez, you went on our phone, you're gonna
if you sit in that chair, you're.
not gonna fit.
We're not gonna see you. How's everything, John?
Yeah,
Good.
a little busy,
Good. Well,
a little busy.
I was happy to go into room 5 and see that the pictures of the 2 memorial schools are already up.
Oh, are they up there?
It's
Good,
very nice.
good.
You were a man with a mission. You come in and just like me. On pile of stuff.
Piles of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it cutting edge, some of it kind of old school.
It's-
But when you're as old as we are, there's certain stuff that I just, hey.
Can't change.
I've done it for 50 years and
I'm not gonna change my way.
just do it that way.
Hey, Steve, you know, if, I think Jeff Koshan said that he would be available at 3. I don't know if that meant, I hadn't talked to him to see if he was gonna come to here or be virtual.
I don't know either. Well, I'm
Okay.
glad to hear that.
Okay. Can you hear us, Sue? Oh, she's still connected.
Well, if Steve can hear us, we should be good.
Oh, yeah. Sue's,
Yes, if you speak slowly and clearly, I can understand you.
she's in the car.
Oh, is he in the car? So he's not seeing anything,
No,
well, except the road, I hope.
I hope we see in the road, yes. It was a nice picture of Alice Nahadas getting the cane.
I haven't said, is that in the,
It was maybe a week ago in the cricket.
okay, yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Glad
That's
that
good.
happened.
Yep,
And after it happens the first time, then it just becomes part of the.
big milestone. It just becomes
Yeah.
part of the record every year.
Every year at this point, we need to do this, and every year at this point, we need to do that.
And we'll see how Alice does. You could be in there next year.
Yep, yep.
You're over 100. You're beating the odds.
Jeff Koshan just texted me that he's in an MECT meeting and will join shortly.
In person or virtually?
He doesn't say.
Okay. We'll give him 5 minutes.
Yep.
He's pretty efficient. Jeff.
Jeff.
So yeah, he's
Uh,
gets things done.
Yeah, I don't know him real well. I
Yeah.
just met him on a couple of tours, but from what I see, he's very.
He's, yeah.
Can you move to that chair so you're facing the screen?
I don't know. I don't want to.
I don't know if you want to either, but if you
Sue wants you to.
face the speaker.
All right, so in other words,
I'm still.
his voice going straight in rather than
If
going
you
across the
you
table.
could face the microphone in order for it to really.
I was really looking for his right profile, which is better than his straight on profile. So that- gonna get it.
Thank you for that.
Aren't you glad you came to the meeting?
Appreciate it.
What, you want to move to town or not?
It's not
I'm
that
not
bad.
all that done up in Brooklyn.
Believe me, if they were looking for the good side of me, I'd have to turn around backwards. To the back of my head, that's all I'd see. Oh, man, those people in Florida took a beating.
Oh,
And
I
it's
haven't really
still-
seen the news or anything
It's-
about how things have moved on.
Yeah, it's really now, it's been up in the northeast corner of Florida now, and they had 16 inches of rain in Orlando in 24 hours.
It's a lot of rain.
Yeah, and then the winds are still about 65 to 70 miles an hour in the upper,
Right,
in the northeast corner. Is it Tallahassee? No, St. Petersburg?
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, yeah. And then it's gonna go out over the ocean. It's gonna get a little stronger. Not much, but it'll probably become a category 1.
The water will crank it up.
Yeah, and then
We'll do
the
it.
dangerous place is if it comes in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina is like a soup bowl.
Yeah.
The middle part of the old part of the city is down here. And everybody who lives outside lives 10 feet, so many higher, yeah.
But it's like New Orleans.
Yeah, so it's just gonna,
Well, how about it on Sanibel Island, the connector is now destroyed.
yeah,
Oh, is it?
yeah.
I know somebody on Sanibel Island. And I know several people that have houses in Naples.
They said they had, a lot of people didn't leave because everyone's supposed to be in the, you know.
Sanibel?
Yeah. And
Now they ain't leaving.
I don't know, they had to go by helicopter or by boat. Only way.
Most of those people probably have boats.
Yeah, the
But I
boats
don't
may
know
not
if
be,
boats are-
the boats may be on the bottom.
A lot of people have waterfront property now.
Yeah, they're living.
Yeah.
They had pictures of some firefighters in a ladder truck. And the water was coming up when they opened the doors to flow through the ladder truck. And they were out trying to rescue people who were out in cars and dragging them out of the cars because they knew that they were either gonna get carried away or drowned.
I saw just before I left on CNN that they had some rescuers, and all of a sudden they jumped back in the boats. What are you doing, alligators? No, middle of downtown.
That'll get you moving fast.
Yes.
I did see a picture of a firehouse that had about 2.5, 3 feet of water. I think the fire trucks would still be operable, but they had an emergency vehicle that. That engine had to be half underwater. That was
Wow, yeah.
Oh, and I can't remember what the last big storm, the big nor'easter that came up. Probably 15, 20 years ago. It came up and just came in the wrong direction in the hat and filled up their entire station with water and ruined all the fire trucks. So they had to borrow fire trucks from Lynn and other big cities around there to take care of Nahat. And then the federal government ordered them, so.
That causeway is always in the water there.
Yeah, it is if they have super high tides or big storms.
Yeah.
That causeway, I mean, it comes right back.
Yeah.
It's just underwater, and once the water recedes, well, you got a lot of sand you gotta get rid of, but.
It's the same way we do Winterberg and Revere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They fill that in to make a road.
And on the
Nature
south,
doesn't really like that.
on the south coast, it's Hull. They get that long.
yes,
stick
they've
that
got
goes
all
up
that,
there.
the,
Yeah, it's what's that, Nantasket Beach down there.
yeah,
You know, Hull has this like this long sand spit.
yeah, that's a little bit like Nahant, there's nothing and then
Yeah.
it's sticking out there.
Well, why don't we get started? We know that Jeff is going to come
He's in
on
route.
board. Steve, can you hear us if we talk slowly?
Yes, perfectly, Tom, thanks.
All right, great. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 3:06 by my watch. And this is a combined meeting of groups 1 and 6 of the Water Resources Protection Task Force. This is on Wednesday, September 29th, 2022. Now, this is a little mistake in the meeting notice because it says 7 PM and we're meeting.
Yeah, I saw that.
at 3.
Yeah, that's true for a little bit.
Yeah, let it be noted let it be noted that it's 3 PM. Hopefully no one complains. All right, so first, we have, why don't we see if anyone has any other just general information they'd like to throw out to anybody before we get into the agenda. I try to wait until Jeff gets here before we start the agenda, but
The day is wrong. It's Thursday now. I see why I was confused with Travis. I had to do this morning.
yeah,
No, my Outlook calendar is what I trust. you know.
yeah.
Well, that's okay.
I was talking to Peter before, John, about how the MWRA has eliminated their connection fees to get into their water system.
Oh,
Of course, you still have to get the pipe from the end of the pipe
you still
to
have the
here.
instruction, yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting that last week, the Quabbin Reservoir was at 91% of capacity.
Well, they're in good shape.
Yeah, that's that. So, I mean, that means it's gonna be, underground springs coming up and refilling that thing.
I must be draining the whole area.
Yeah, it's just, it has a large watershed, but I know we said that, unless you could get a lot of other communities to buy into the project of bringing the water here, that would be rather difficult to sell to the town unless we had a real big problem. And if we have a real big problem, it's too late to try and sell it to the town.
Yeah. But that's one thing of the agenda.
Yeah.
On a related sort of thing, I was, the select board had a tour of the sewer plant, earlier this week. And I was speaking with Chuck, and I know that our consumption here is down, what, 25% or so from what it is? And I asked the question, so if we're down 25%, how much water does that represent if that water were not be used in our reservoir in Gravelly Pond? In other words, how many inches higher is it than it otherwise would be? Now, I understand that we're drawing water from both Gravelly Pond and from the wells, but still, you can do a mathematical calculation. How many gallons are you saving with 20%? And what's the surface area of this pond? Okay, so how many inches more would it be? We understand that you're pumping from Round Pond into Gravelly Pond, so you can never really look at where you're at and be able to get an absolute handle. But people can get their head around the fact that if your reduction is X, this is how much water, extra water, how many more inches of water in Gravelly Pond. People will understand that.
Yeah, that's a lot easier than.
Then
doing
a whole bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
Well, even if you just did the gallons coming out of Gravelly Pond versus the gallons coming out of the sewage treatment plant, what's the differential?
Yeah, except the sewage treatment plant, but still what's coming out, let's see. It's coming out of the pond and what's coming, the difference would be, in theory, what's coming out of the wells, Lincoln Street wells, right? Because Lincoln Street.
So,
wells-
what about sending this problem to a high school physics class? Because it's
Yeah,
about a 55-acre pond with 390 million gallon capacity. And in the summer, we're drawing about 1 million gallons a day. So they ought to be able to figure out if we drop our consumption, 20 or 25 or 30%, what's the impact in terms of height of the water in the pond?
right. And people everybody would understand that.
It's funny, Steve, I remember the first day in my calculus class, when they said they had a cone-shaped reservoir that had a leak
Yeah,
a third of the way up and calculated how much water. I said, why don't you just measure it? Calculator.
Exactly.
yeah, there is some geometry you can work, but the easiest thing is, all right, let's just.
So did you get an answer about?
No, Chuck said, you know, he threw out all those variables, which I knew were kind of there, and I said, I understand, you really can't just look at the pond and say, oh, now it's going down that much less, because there are lots of other things feeding in there. So just do the math. Just do the math and assume it's not a cone, it's just that at the top level, it's really a cylinder. And that's it.
It's just an estimate. Doesn't have to be exact.
I didn't, you know, I should have given it to him as a homework assignment. I still can do that. I don't know that we know. He knows what the surface area of Gravelly Pond is, but that's got to exist somewhere. We can make some estimates. I just think that would be a good number to have in our repertoire.
Yeah, that would be a nice little go-to number.
Yes.
While we're talking about developments, I may have said this at the last task force meeting, but Scott Horsley has tasked a group of his Harvard grad students to collect comparables, comparable situations where towns or cities have modified their water rate pricing structure, and then collected data on what happens. So that should be valuable for us if they come up with some good case examples.
When you say, Steve, when you say collect data on other comparables, and then communities that have maybe changed their rates and then seen what's happened with regard to consumption?
Yeah, that's right, and give us the other variables involved.
Okay.
For instance, how frequently people get bills, and whether there's a deduct or irrigation meter system as well as a
All right.
drinking system.
This would be helpful. I mean, right now, all we've done is really look at rate structures from the surrounding communities. That's about all we've done, I think, right?
Well, we have a couple of data points from Scott's own experience in Katuitt, but we need more data.
Yes.
Hold on, Steve. Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we hear
Yeah.
you clear.
Hello.
We're just kind of talking about material information that was not on the agenda. Talked about MWRA eliminating connection fees to communities that wanted to come into their Corbin Reservoir supply. And talking about how much water actually is being saved in terms of measurable amounts in the Gravelly Pond. In other words, is it 3 inches of water per week, or is it, we can tell people the number of gallons, but I don't think that makes sense to them.
No, that wouldn't do. Is there a capacity for Gravelly Pond? I never hear anybody.
I could figure that out for you. I've talked to Chuck Dam about how much water we're using or saving. I could kind of talk with Chuck Dam and get that if you want.
Mathematical calculation, but you got to have the data.
Yeah, Chuck has said the capacity is 390 million gallons, and the surface area is 56 acres.
390 million gallons.
390 million gallon capacity. Inflows obviously from groundwater, from the round pond wells, and a little bit of surface water. And you could assume that it's a hemisphere or something for calculus purposes.
And what was the surface area?
56 acres.
Is it that big?
Yes.
Wow. All right, 56 acres, that's the key number that you need. So you can figure out.
I would, if you want me to, I would attempt to figure out how many inches we're saving
Yeah,
per week or month or whatever.
I think that would be a,
That would be good, or even reduce it to, for every inch is how many thousands of gallons? Every inch of drop. Or increase, whichever way you want to look at it, if you're saving it or using it. And the assumption is, of course, that it's all coming from gravelly at this point. Nothing's coming from the well, but you've got to make some sort of an assumption here.
Yeah, it is coming from the well, by the way. I was there the other day and the well is now pumping in. But
Round up.
anyway, Tom, or Chuck definitely has a number that he thinks we're saving per week or month right now. And so we could convert that to some inches if we try.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that when we hear that, you know, it's 20% reduction, that's great, but I
what
think,
does that mean?
you know, how could people actually see that?
Yeah, just to, if you don't know, it's down about 6 feet. It's down exactly 6 feet from the high right now, from full right now. And that 6 feet down is not all that rare, actually. I think it was 2 years ago, it was 6 feet down. And I think 5 years ago, it was 6 feet down. In years 2 and 4, it wasn't, or something like that.
So is that 6 feet down from peak capacity?
Yes.
Yeah, and the intake is still what, about 20 feet below the surface, Jeff?
Oh, yes, that's not an issue at all.
Oh, yeah, no, that's, yeah. We're probably normally at the lowest point in the cycle right now.
Yes, and it's actually quite common to be at this level.
Yeah,
I was surprised about that. That's why I bring it up.
You're
It's
not
6
surprised
feet
then?
lower, it's 6 feet lower, and it's 10 to 30 feet off that high shoreline. So it's dramatic looking, but it's not as uncommon as I thought it was.
all right, so we're getting into the cone mathematics now. It's not a cylinder.
Yeah, so, I mean, when you think about some of the other cities and towns, Lynn just put in their water restriction a couple of weeks ago because their water capacity was at 51% of being full. That's low to me. That seems like, why would you wait until you've got half your capacity?
Come on, remember Dublin then?
So that would be another way to express it, maybe even a
Yes.
more common way, right?
Right, in other words, not 6 feet down, but what is, how much capacity is left relative to where full, relative to
Yeah.
full?
All right, I'll try and come up with some wording and information, accurate information from Chuck and wording to describe the situation.
Yeah,
All right, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
All right, so do we need to talk anything about discussion on water usage and how to control usage? Or do we want to go in and start to talk about the possibility of conservation rates and
I think the former, in my opinion, because my personal opinion, I'm open to difference, but my personal opinion is this is all about, we have a bountiful water supply. It's all about conserving it to keep it bountiful throughout the year. I think we need to emphasize that as a task force, because there's a lot of positives there, and the rate immediately becomes a negative issue. So I don't want to forget to emphasize our positives. Otherwise, we'll be taken as negative.
This is, we are in our call with Erica Brown, this is what she calls our kumbaya theme. So she's a little more cynical about this than we are, but you're right, we are blessed presently. I wanted to throw out something I mentioned to John Round as just as a sort of reference point. I'm not recommending this as a goal, but it's an interesting thought exercise, which is, what if we could conserve water to the point where we can shut off the Lincoln Street well completely. The reason for that is that the well is more likely to become contaminated over time in ways that are hard to remediate than Gravelly Pond and Round Pond.
I totally
So
agree with that. It becomes
It'd
an
be a way to
alternate,
sort of capitalize on our good fortune from and our legacy of those surface water sources in Hamilton.
Is this, are you suggesting this is kind of an academic exercise? In other words, let's get to the point of consumption where if we had to, we could shut off the Lincoln Street wells and we'd be fine. We'd be in kind of water neutral territory.
Yes, exactly. It gives us,
Okay.
at least in a theoretical sense, it gives us a very ambitious, kind of what they call a big, very audacious goal to try out and see if we could possibly hit it.
So if one source or another has issues or problems, the town can survive.
Yeah, and I believe that if we came down to the maximum per capita per day average usage that the state recommends, we would be there, just as a reference point.
Well,
So
that's,
far
I mean,
above it.
your slide presentation, of course, certainly reinforces that particular concern. We're at the upper end of the scale.
Yep.
And we
Yep.
shouldn't be.
and I think over the next 20+ years, we need to be concerned about having alternate sources of water. I think one of our goals should be alternate sources of water, given the global water crisis and the local PFAS crisis and everything else. And at that point, you can look at Lincoln Street well as a reasonable alternate source of water. And I think we find another place to put a well in as a reasonable alternate. With all the research of our ground that we're doing with Scott right now, where is another reasonable alternate source of water? So I think, I don't know, I think otherwise you sound, well, no, I think that sounds good. It doesn't, it's not just an academic
MWRA just
exercise.
became more affordable, if you want to use that in quotations.
What was that? I'm sorry.
That they no longer are charging a hookup fee. You still got to put down pipe, but there's no entry fee to get into the MWRA. As of what, last week?
I saw it was in the news last week.
Where would we run a pipe?
I think that would be a regional initiative, but I think it's something you have to address. That's not us. That's like,
Yeah, it would have to come from Wakefield or conceivably Swampscott.
right.
There was supposed to be a spur into Peabody, but I don't know if that still exists.
Isn't it Linfield and Peabody on one, and then Marblehead and Swampscott on the other? Because I know Marblehead's on MWRA water.
Linfield's got its wells.
Okay, okay.
Linfield has
Yeah,
wells.
it's one of the options that the very recent study in Hamilton looked at for their long-term viability, and they rejected it in favor of creating a tie-in with Beverly Salem, which also has a surplus.
So I think it comes down to a very long-term possibility is tie into MWRA, because it's not happening for the next 20 years.
Yeah,
If, I have a question, if you subtract 40% of our water right now comes from Lincoln Street well, right, roughly? If you subtract the unaccounted for water, which is somewhere around 20%, that means we have 20% of conservation, is that right? If we can
Yeah,
gain,
figure about a third of the water comes from the Lincoln Street well. It varies depending on the season. That's the balance. And you're right about we could hopefully pick up 20% savings in unallocated water. We can
So our target for conservation would be roughly 15%, am I thinking right?
Conservation in the summer.
Target for conservation, maybe figured high 20 and then settle for 15.
Well,
But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, for every 100 gallons, 60 comes from the reservoir, 40 comes from the wells. 20% is extraneous stuff that we've got to solve with leaks. And so if we can stop at least 2/3 of that, and Chuck is working on that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that lowers the total consumption. So that 100 gallons, now really, we only need 80 gallons because we were losing 20 anyway.
Right.
So, let's see, you figure that out. I'm just trying to think, now you're down to 80.
And
So,
60
so
again.
I do think the number is 20%, although Steve threw me a curveball saying 33% is from Lincoln Street. Well, I thought it was 40% also.
It varies on the season. I think overall it's in the 40s. Right now, Lincoln Street well is not being used that much. In the summer, it's mostly gravelly pond. In the winter, the wells get more use.
Steve, where'd you come up with 33%?
The average the last 10 years, but it's certainly been higher recently, you're right.
Okay,
I don't know why, but it looks like a very slow trend of increasing dependence on Lincoln Street well. Well, I wouldn't call it dependence, but increasing utilization for our total water. And there may be good engineering reasons for that. There's an optimal flow rate for a well, obviously. You shut it down when it needs to recharge and you don't let it overfill. A couple of other things I wanted to toss into the thinking here. One is the question of deduct meters,
excuse me.
which, are entirely fair in that they represent usage that doesn't contribute to the cost of operating a sewage treatment plant. However, I think for a lot of users, a lot of residences, they don't draw that distinction, and it just looks like very inexpensive water, around $6-7 instead of $15 or $16 per 100 cubic feet, 1,000 cubic feet, whatever. So it may enter into the outcome in terms of people using the price as a signal that's going to affect their behavior and make them think about conserving. If they're drawing a distinction between full price water and with sewage included at $15. And
No, I didn't catch the end there,
Yeah,
Steve.
you broke up, Steve.
well, I'm thinking ahead to how people will react to the signals of changing price. That, in other words, conservation will occur when people take that seriously and say, gee, I want to save some money. I'm going to use less water.
Well, I think there
And
are
if
two
they-
ways.
Yeah.
There are two ways that signal can be taken. And both of them are urging people to use less. And yeah, one is it costs more. And the other one, there's a reason that these numbers were raised because we want people to use less also. So they've got a pocketbook consideration, although if you do the math, the people that are using it, I don't think they care so much, but I think we ought to find out. But just the fact that we're doing that is telling everybody we're concerned. And we're trying to do a number of different things to reduce water usage, and this is one of them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, John.
Well,
The other thing I wanted to throw in here, and I'm doing this because I may lose the signal here coming up into the wilds of Mid-Coast Maine. The other thing to think about, is that, as Chuck says, people get their bill about 4 months after
Right.
the behavior that triggered the bill. So the price in many circumstances isn't even going to be a good signal. They don't know how much they used, even if they're paying attention, and they don't know what they paid for it until way after the fact. So part of this is the need to replace our meters, which are due for replacement now or soon, with something that's much smarter, that provides real-time information both to the water department and to the household using the water.
Well, we spoke about providing more information on the bills, just like we get on our gas bill and our electric bill, and we certainly should provide historical information like a year's worth. I think the other thing we should do is we've got to convert cubic feet to gallons, at least for people. I'll bet that
Yeah,
people don't even know what a cubic foot is. And, you know,
Yeah, it might also-
this
it might
is
also be
how much
good
you're
to do this-
using. So providing that information in a bill, but that we definitely need to provide some history.
Yeah, I did talk to Chuck about a week ago about that, and right now with the system that we're on, we do not have that ability to give the past like 3 readings and how much the bills were. So we'd have to get a new program, I guess, to be able to do that.
All right, I understand you have the program to do that, but it
Yeah.
seems to me that's a
Yeah.
reasonable request.
Are you familiar with the term groupthink in transforming how organizations operate?
No.
It's a philosophy where nobody wants to be the first person and nobody wants to be the last person. But when you get 10% or more, everybody wants to be involved because nobody wants to be the outlier. And I think if we do a publicly relations push in town, I think you'll find similar results where nobody wants to be the person on the block that has the green lawn when everyone else is brown.
Yeah,
So I think we need to keep that in mind as we go ahead. I think we can do a lot on conservation if we try to get a lot of influences to make sure that if you don't conserve, you're the odd person out.
yeah. Steve, I had a question on the data that you were working with on the PowerPoints that you put together and household consumption. Is household consumption, is that combined when you have 2 different meters, one which is connected to sewer and the other one which might be irrigation, that's additive?
Yes, exactly. That's the
That's
major database crunch that we did to improve on Eli's data. Instead of looking at each meter individually, we aggregated them where they serve the same address and billing.
All right, well, that's good. Then we can interpret the data appropriately.
Did you, what do you think of the idea? I mean, I know we can't execute it on today's bills, but of also giving people comparative information the way they do with the electrical bill. So you're using more or less than your, than the average household in Manchester.
Oh,
I'm in favor.
that's, and when you say average household, I've kind of broken down for the consumption area where you're at.
Well, you could.
You broke it up into 3 different blocks, what, under 25,000, 25 to 150 or something. If you compare it to everybody in town, that's not probably, I don't know how helpful that is.
You have to be by the size of house.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, it might look hopeless to the people who are using great amounts of water. Or it might actually be a point of pride. Sorry, maybe.
Yeah, you had 3 categories, and I'm not sure what your thinking was when you broke it out into under 75,000, under 150,000 and greater than 150,000 gallons. Was there some sort of a rationale and why you made those, you chose those cutoffs?
I think those are similar to the breakpoints for the pricing tiers today, which are of course in 1,000 cubic feet. Also, they were a way of breaking the user group into reasonably comparable size chunks in terms of number of households. Yeah, it's an interesting question. What kind of comparables you want to show people?
Yes.
We know that those have some impact on people's mindset.
Because otherwise, those small users, they will always be in the lowest 5%. When, when that perhaps is not the right measure for them, because they'll feel really good. No, I mean, for a small user, maybe you're just average or maybe you're above average, but when you look at it across everybody, your
From my
consumption.
point of view, this comes down to our task force should recommend the new meters. So we can do any of this stuff.
Recommend what, Jeff?
The new meters.
Our task force, one of our recommendations should be that we get new meters throughout the town that can measure monthly and report on all these items.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
Chuck would agree as well. He's
Yeah.
itching to get the data and the accuracy and speed.
You said it would take a while, quite a few years to do that, but I think it's a good angle.
And you could require any new construction added.
Well, we'll do every yeah, but this town, this town.
2 or 3, 4 a year, whatever.
That's right. It's about what it is.
Jeff, you said that we should purchase new meters that show monthly.
Yeah, whatever the new meters are, and yes, it should report monthly.
They can show it even real time. They can
Well-
show it every.
That's a bit of a fear, actually, in some ways, because the summer drought is on, conserve water. The next day, the town would know everybody who didn't follow that rule. It's kind of weird, but
Would that be a problem, Jeff?
not really. It's a little bit of a big brother.
You'd only
thing.
be able to find out from your meter. You couldn't get into someone else's meter. Unless
No,
you-
but think
unless
about,
you're the person
about if-
working in the office.
no, all I'm saying, it's a little big brother-ish.
No, I
if I-
agree.
If on July 1st, the town announces that we have water restrictions, and on July 4th or July 2nd, they can see everybody who did not comply with those water restrictions. It's a little bit, it's quite different.
Well, I mean, right now, we can see everyone who didn't comply necessarily with the restrictions 2 months later. Or 3 months later, you just see what the water bill was relative to what their history is. And you know that there's been a reduction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's different than somebody calling you up on July 3rd.
Yeah,
and
no,
saying,
that's not the intention here.
Yeah.
You use too much, slow down.
Based on-
Regardless, I think
based
we
on
need
some
to
of
do-
the- Sorry, Jeff.
Sorry.
Based
Regardless,
on some of the comments that people make at town meeting, you know that there are an awful lot of people concerned with individual freedoms who go to town meeting
In privacy.
and privacy. Yeah.
that was my only point. It's something that somebody will bring up at some point. Oh, you're monitoring me monthly? Oh, you're also monitoring me more than that. It's inevitable, but regardless, I think our task force should recommend the new meters so we can.
We can monitor people monthly now. It's just labor intensive.
Jeff, in truth, if they were willing to drive around every every
Yeah.
day. Pick
They
up
could
the
do it every
RF
day.
signals from meters, they could measure it's just a pain in the butt to do it.
Yes. So that's not changing the ability, it's just making it more cost effective, shall we say.
Thank you.
It's more
Yeah,
what you
better
do with
living through
information
technology, right?
than how you collect it.
Yeah.
So it appears that what we're thinking about is that it would be better for us to work on controlling usage and letting people be able to control, have the information that's available to control their own usage than to institute a punishment or, like the stick, for having conservation rates for big users.
I think we need both. I think we need both, but I don't want to forget to emphasize the former.
Yeah, I second that, particularly if we're gonna continue to have deduct meters. Those need to have pretty steeply escalating prices on them because you're taking our precious drinking water and feeding it to plants. Which you're entitled to do, you should just be paying for it.
Yeah. Well, and all of this leads to more information that we can provide on the water bills. More timely information. Yeah, and so that people can really look and see what their consumption is and feel good if they're using less this year than they used last year. And as you said, comparatively, somebody said comparatively, also see how you're doing relative to other people. I'm not sure who those other people are, whether it's the whole town or just people in your category. And I don't know, what do people think about that? Should that be comparative for everyone or comparative just for?
Square footage of your house, single family house under whatever, 2,000 square feet. Single family house under 10,000.
I think that's kind of tough. I mean, the number of large estates here that have 2 people living in them. There are a lot of large places that just got 2 people.
I know, $25 million. That's
10,000 square feet.
Yeah, and they
I
don't
think
use any
it's-
water because there's nobody there. Unless they've got a large lawn, and they probably do.
what we do. Yeah.
I
But
feel
they're-
like that's a
they're-
decision that we can deal with later. We simply need to be able to collect the data better.
Yeah,
And let's decide later.
I think it's something we should do. We can talk about that later, but it is an initiative that we should provide. We should provide information, comparative information of some sort.
Yes,
Just not sure what that comparable comparative information is.
yes. We recommend new meters and we recommend bills that provide more information, including comparable usage.
Yeah,
Since we're kind of on this topic, I don't exactly know what our agenda is, but I think it's clear that we need to work with, encourage the top users, because that is where we're going to get the most bang for the buck as far as conserving water goes. It's also true, Steve will correctly say that if 80% of the people are saving a little bit of water, they're going to save a heck of a lot of water. We definitely need to do that. But I think we need to encourage the big users to drill wells, basically, is what I think. I think we need to, the big users who spend a lot of money on water and other things, I think hopefully we could convince them to drill appropriate wells and save a whole bunch of water that way.
well, if they're not in our
I'll say,
aquifer.
if they're away from our aquifer.
Yeah, that's really key. And
We've looked at that. They are not by our aquifers. The aquifers are very narrow and we will look at that closer, but it's pretty clear already that the big users could drill wells not in our aquifer and save a whole bunch of water.
Our aquifers were around 128, correct?
They're not
You know-
Masconomo.
Jeff, this is an interesting subject because I've been trying to probe the private wells that are currently operating in Manchester. And Peter, you've been a help along with Ellen and her data, but the jury's still kind of out on this. I do have a lot of anecdotal information from chatting with people who have wells. Some of those, sorry,
Although we actually, we can leave it partially, we can't close it fully because it is a meeting, it's open.
sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
Yeah. We'll open the door again after the noise in the hall dies down.
Ah, okay. Anyway, some of the private wells are not usable even for irrigation because of, in some cases, salt levels, and in other cases, the iron level, which may not be toxic to the plants, but it's very ugly if your well water stains your lawn a rusty color. And if you have to be really careful about not getting it on your car. And on the other hand, there are some wells like the fabled well at George Smith's property at Masconomo and Beach that is prolific. He already supplies water to 2 of his neighbors in addition to himself, and conceivably could do more. Anyway, raise the possibility that one strategy here is for somehow the town to participate in drilling wells in areas like Masconomo and Boardman, and making them little irrigation revenue producing wells.
I like that
Much lower.
idea.
Much lower standard of treatment. We don't have to do a lot of measurement. They don't have to comply with the same standards that a public drinking water supply well would. And, maybe we could tip some of the folks who might take decades to drill a well on their own. We could tip them over into using well water.
I think as I've looked at it, I think that is our most immediate path to success. Conserving 20 to 25% of our water that way, possibly.
I'd be interested, it's interesting, it'd be great to push the people in that direction. I don't know how many people are involved in that. Has anybody done an analysis of the list of the 80 or 90 wells here and how many are in the?
Yeah, I've tried. I can't even determine which of them are still operating and which produce water that's usable.
Independent of that, I'm just interested in addresses. Which addresses are in the aquifer and which are not?
But we've got the addresses, and very few of them are anywhere near the Sawmill, Lincoln Aquifer, or the.
Yeah, I mean, a major number on Boardman Avenue,
Yeah,
on
that's
Masconomo and Proctor, and down in East Manchester.
Yeah, and
East.
there's a bunch on Loading Place and Forest and Mill and Plum Hill because we didn't extend the line out there when the houses were first built.
Okay, well, those are in zone 3 for the aquifer. If you go out in Loading Place,
Right.
I think that's in zone 3, so that eventually feeds into there. But anything in West
Yeah.
Manchester or Masconomo or way out on Summer, none of those are.
No,
Right.
We're still trying, Steve, we're still trying to correct the private well data. Unfortunately, that was not high on the priority list, given the staffing. And what was supposed to happen, which never did, was the private well people were supposed to report to the state and if the status of their well annually. And then the state was supposed to tell the Board of Health. Neither happened. And we did not have the manpower, person power to really follow up on that.
Yeah.
But we will be, I promise you that.
Well, I think that kind of feeds into all of this. We gotta kind of know that. just know where the wells are, and
We know what they have, we don't know how many are operable.
it's just a few,
You know,
just the fact that they're there, I
well-
think that's good enough.
Yeah, Gordon Turner has actually plotted them with GIS coordinates on one of the Mass Mapper things. So I'll try to get him to circulate that version. He doesn't
Yeah.
have all of them. Some of them don't have street numbers, but obviously we're mostly concerned with the ones that are either domestic or irrigation, not monitoring or recovery.
And I think it's a number that as a volunteer group, we could get 3 or 5 people to go around and communicate and figure out the details just by talking to the owners.
Oh, Jeff, you know what this is? It's an Eagle Service Leadership Project.
I was gonna say it's an intrusion on people's privacy. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, but you
I don't know what's
You
gonna
get
happen
some,
when you're in the phone, but some of it may not be good.
get some cute boy or girl from high school saying, doing a scout project. Just want to take a look at your well. Take a little measurement of a sample of the water, the temperature.
I hear both sides of that, Tom. I'm not, I agree with you that lots of people would consider it an invasion of privacy. So but I do think that in the spirit of conservation and in an effort to keep Manchester with a clean, bountiful source of water, that we could work politely with those people who are willing to work with us to better understand the well situation, what the possibilities are.
Well, when you say work, we're collecting data, but I'm not sure that there's gonna be any actionable thing associated with it, other than its input to say, who's drawing on this aquifer? I don't
Well,
think-
let's say we didn't know about George Smith's clean, prolific well.
Yeah.
And we found out about that, and then we found 5 others. And we went down the path of, I don't know, using that water somehow through neighbors, or maybe we buy the well from the person and give them free water, and now we have our 3rd source of water. I don't know.
In terms of wells, I do like the angle that if we can get the folks who are outside of the aquifer to drill a well for their irrigation.
We'd only need, in my guess, just a pure guess,
You know,
we'd only
by
need,
whatever means, and I don't think the town should necessarily get involved in the business of drilling a well and then, selling it to these people. I think these people, whatever it costs to drill a well, X thousands of dollars, then their water's free. I don't think you have to incentivize them, and I don't want to get in the middle of that and have to charge them some money when in fact, once they drill the well, they're done.
yes, my only imagination there was, there might already be these revenue, this 3rd source of water that we might be looking for. It might already exist, but I totally agree with you
Yeah.
other than that.
Yeah,
And-
that's,
And in working with them, all I meant is, identifying those 10 locations where we could save right away 10% of the clean drinking water that we're shipping to them. And
there's some plumbing involved in that approach, of course. Because now you gotta run pipes to, if there are eight houses involved or something, you gotta plumb them all in.
I don't mean to confuse things. I
It's a
mentioned
one-time shot, but so's drilling the well, and after they're done, they're done.
that is definitely my main point.
And-
That's
and,
definitely
yeah.
what I agree with.
The concern that I had is right now financially, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them because water is pretty cheap.
That's why we have to do the carrot and the stick, both.
Amen. Amen. Neither one will work without the other.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta make it so it's, they can do the math and they say, this will be fine, and they can amortize the cost of a well pretty quickly, I think.
and they can be seen as leaders in the community for conservation at the same time.
And they can have green lawns,
Exactly.
and nobody can complain.
If no one has any other information on this topic, I'd like to go and have Peter talk to us a little bit about his communication with Greenscapes, is that correct?
Correct. I had a very interesting conversation with the folks at Greenscapes. They have some excellent literature. And we can get at least one, and I think you could probably weasel more than one package of 500 for free. I think we could probably get more if we gave them a good song and dance. The one that's really very informative is to say 8.5 by 11. Pre-pandemic, they were dropping off similar pieces of information at the library and the town hall. Unfortunately, they were literally just dropping them off, and they were horizontal and they were not obvious, and there wasn't a lot of usage. So I would suggest that we do it vertical in a prominent place, so you come in, you see it, and it registers that, hey, I might be interested in this, and then you take a copy. Most of the things in here would have to be done in the spring, but there are all kinds of tips on the height of your grass, when to water, how to conserve. There are also these bipoles. Similar information, rain garden, outdoor water conservation. These maybe we could put in bills, good, all right? They're very well done. Again, we can get probably a couple of thousand, I would think, with a smile. And there's one other thing that I learned, and I haven't been able to follow up, but our esteemed leader here has volunteered to follow up tomorrow. They told me that they are working with the elementary school 5th graders on a program of water conservation, clean water, how to stop polluting the water, blah, 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 blah. I've called the school trying to get more information on that. I haven't heard back yet, but it's possible that maybe this is a pretty extensive. They tried to sell me that it was a very extensive program. I couldn't get confirmation from the school. I'd like to hear an educator's perspective on that. But maybe we could then have the paper interview the 5th graders and show the whole town, hey, everyone's involved in this, even the little kids. I'm sure the school would like the publicity. Who knows? So I can get these whenever you want. They suggest in the spring it's more effective than doing it now, because people will put them in a drawer and then forget what they are come April. But whatever the folks want to do, it's fine by me.
I think that sounds like a great idea to have the paper interview the 5th graders. And Tom, I will help you with your project by talking to a special teacher that you and I know who should have inside information on this. My wife.
I have a meeting with John Willis tomorrow morning on another topic, and this just fell into my lap this afternoon, so.
I have a much more direct and reliable source than the principal.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree.
How intrusive would it feel to mail that 8.5 by 11 to the top 10% of the users in town, or top certain percent? Would that be too pushy on them? I kind of like the idea, but.
Yeah. I mean, the water conservation, the summer water conservation pamphlet is the smallest of the 3, but that's certainly would just have to be added to the bills, and it may cost us money to have it added to the bills, but it's pretty minor.
You could put these in the packet for the springtime meeting. That everyone,
Yeah.
that's probably 300 people, maybe 400.
I'm trying to target that Greenscapes. Greenscapes is a fairly expensive project, I think, for a homeowner to undertake, I don't know. And we want to target those big water users, so we know who they are. Could we send what you're leafing through? Could we send that to those top however many users?
Well, I would suggest that, as we've already heard, that this, to put this in the pamphlet or the set of information that goes out with the select board's permission, that goes out with the town reports, it would only cost about $150. That's what they cost for the ride-alongs.
Oh, would that go to the entire town?
That would go to the entire town.
Oh, I'm good with
Now, you
that.
have to buy these.
No, they're 3.
Okay, we'd have to get 2,200 of them.
I'm good with that then. I was objecting to just handing them out at the annual meeting because our top 10% of the users, most of them won't be at the annual meeting.
And they have some inexpensive things like make sure water only once a week, make sure it goes 6 inches deep. Keep your grass 3 inches high, don't go lower than that. So those are not really, those are like first level, relatively inexpensive things that you can do to conserve the water.
I think that's a great idea if it goes to the whole town. If we can do that.
And we can put those in the banks, we can put them in town hall, we can put them in the library. I suggest we go out and get some vertical holders so that they're prominent rather than just buried on a shelf someplace.
Yeah, the little pamphlet on outdoor summer deal, that's directly relevant, yeah, that's
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 really
right on the money.
as of what we've just been dealing with.
Yeah.
And now,
So I like that. This is more of a broad sort of thing that's not water, it's general environment, conservation. In a broader sense, which is good. But water is maybe, I don't know, 30% of that, and the other stuff, there's other stuff you can do to be a conservationist. So, but yeah, putting this in with the.
You want to save these to give to the bigger committee, or what do you want to?
yeah, I think it'd be good to have those to go to the larger committee, and I'll Jeff, if you will follow up with your wife, and I will talk to, I think we just lost Mr. Gang. He's no longer with us. I think he thought he was gonna get out.
Where is he, in Maine
He's
somewhere?
going up to Port Clyde, Maine, so
That does not ring a bell.
that,
Must be a long way away.
he was in Kennebunkport when the meeting started, so.
Oh, well, it's not that far away, but
Yeah,
he's en route.
His wife grew up in really, really way far northern Maine.
Oh,
Like, it's hard to say northern Maine and realize how far north it actually is where she's from. Way, way north of Mount Katahdin.
Oh,
yeah.
all right, thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think that would be great to have for the big meetings and the next meeting, which I think is what, next Wednesday?
Yes.
I think we have a meeting next Wednesday. All right, so then the next item says discussion on intertown collaboration on protecting wells and surface water supplies.
Yeah, we definitely need Steve for that. He's been on top of everything.
I'm here in town hall. I will ask Chuck or Nate, we had asked them to put together a table of a comparison of the various towns where they get their water. There were a bunch of questions. I can't remember all of them. And I know I spoke with him about a week and a half ago, and he says, "Help me when you need it." And I said, we don't need it tomorrow, but like in the next couple of weeks would be good. I will check and see where he stands. But that kind of feeds into this, to know which towns are really the towns we should be aligning with or talking to, because we have in common an aquifer. And therefore, if we have a problem with the aquifer, if they have a problem with the aquifer, we do. We're all kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, as far as the aquifer
And
goes,
that helped, the Hamilton, so we know what the story is with Hamilton, but we need to know what the story is for half a dozen other towns as well.
we need to talk to Scott Horsley about this, because
Yes, that aquifer is moving around depending upon what he comes back and tells us.
yeah,
I don't know what it's defined as right now.
yes, we need to, my sense is that our aquifer, our quote aquifer is, first of all, I think it's plural. I think we have multiple aquifers. But I don't really know what the broad scope of that is, and only experts like Scott knows or can figure that out. So my first response is that we don't have a whole lot of interconnection of aquifers. Everybody else is on the Ipswich side. We're on our side, kind of in general, but I don't know how far that goes. As far as intertown cooperation, Steve has done a whole bunch of looking into that. So we need him to talk about that detail.
Well, I'm interested, Gloucester, which I know draws a little bit, and also Beverly, which of course Wenham Lake is a big source for them, but I'm not sure what feeds that. And
Well, I know what feeds Wenham Lake. Wenham Lake is fed by the Ipswich River. Ipswich River literally has a canal, that straight canal that goes down into Wenham, I think it is. And then it pumps it up to that big reservoir along Route 1, and then that reservoir drains down into Wenham Lake. 5+ years ago, I went to a presentation at their pump site where they described that entire process.
there's a reservoir on Route 1, you said?
If we looked at a map, if I probably could share a map, but the map would show the Ipswich River running, a
Yeah.
canal running straight down, about a mile-long canal into a pump house in Wenham near Cherry Street, I think it is. That pumps it up to a big reservoir. I forget the name, by Route 1, which then drains into Wenham Lake. The reservoir on Route 1,
Putnamville,
Yep, Putnamsville Reservoir. That is filled by a pump house at the end of the canal from the Ipswich River. And Putnamsville Reservoir drains into Wenham Lake. A pipe connects it to Wenham Lake, which is filled by Putnamsville Reservoir. So that has nothing to do with our water at all.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm seeing Wenham Lake.
You're looking at a map? Yeah, if you look at a map, if you look at Google Maps and just look at that region. that
Putnam, I
covers-
see Putnamville Reservoir.
Okay, and you see the northwest to southeast straight canal above it? Above them both?
Northeast, let's see, do I see a canal?
There's a straight line. If you look at the non satellite view, just the map view,
Yeah, I'm on a map view here, and I'm looking for some sort of I don't see any line coming out of that.
you're looking on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Let me make sure it shows up on your phone also.
Oh, I see a line up north from the Ipswich Wildlife Reserve.
Correct. And it runs northwest
Close
to
to Cherry Street.
southeast. Northwest to southeast, right?
That's correct.
Yep, that is the canal, literally dug many, many years ago from the Ipswich River. It drains from the Ipswich River to the very end of that canal at Cherry Street, there's a pump house building that's very similar to our Lincoln Street well size that pumps it west through a 6-inch main or something like that to Putnamsville Reservoir. And
Okay, so that pump house fills Putnamville Reservoir. Okay,
Yes.
so. all right.
Yes,
I
and
understand
then
what's
there's
happening.
another pipe that connects Putnamsville Reservoir to Wenham Lake, and they open that valve and gravity fills Wenham Lake. And I simply went to a presentation about this by the guy who, the town and the guy who runs that pump house and the whole system, like the water guy for Beverly and Salem or something like that. And he gave a presentation on this, and that's.
So this reservoir in Route 1, that's right where Route 1 and 95 split going north in Danvers.
Yes, yes, you can.
Right where they kind of split and go
Yes.
in different directions.
Yes, about the only place you see that reservoir is off
Right
of
where
Locust
62,
Street.
right where 62 crosses 95.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay. All right, well, I'm educated on that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, so I've just written down that John's gonna check with Chuck and Nate for the answers
So
to
the
the
answer to that
questions.
question, I can't remember the list of questions. Yeah.
On the questionnaire that we gave. them.
Right. I can yell down the hall right now.
What's that?
You can put that in the notes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Oh, no, I'm just,
I'll try to summarize Steve's understanding of neighboring towns. I'll ask for a little help. What has he told us about Hamilton? Basically, that they have decided it wouldn't make sense to connect with Manchester. And it wouldn't make sense to connect with MWRA. But I don't know what, I think what makes sense is drilling more wells or using their well system. And Steve would summarize this in 3 minutes. I think they looked at connecting with Manchester, don't like the idea. They looked at connecting with MWRA, not realistic. And then I think their top solution is protecting and enhancing their well structure. But let's ask Steve when he comes back or another day.
Well, we've got the report.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
So we can look at that.
well, they've got some wells that have gone bad, or one well that's gone bad, is that correct? So that's why they're protecting their well structure, because they've got one that's not usable because of the high sun level in it.
yes, they're doing the same thing that we're doing, essentially. I'd say they're in a less fortunate situation and they're a little bit behind us. So,
My brother is the chairman of the Concom for Wenham,
mhm.
and I guess there is a push from the citizenship. There are wells there, but they believe that the aquifers between Wenham, Hamilton, and Essex are all connected. So there's an issue about where's their water going?
I think that's fair to say, and that's where I think Scott Horsley and more extensive research comes in. I don't know how much of that has been done by Hamilton, but now we're talking, as opposed to the Putnamsville and Wenham Lake situation, that's clearly comes from the Ipswich River. Now we're talking about wells that very well could be in the Gravelly Pond aquifer, very well, especially when you consider that we're pumping from wells that are in Round Pond. And Scott has already told us that Chabaco, that it appears based on sand and gravel deposits, that now voted down Chabaco Village situation that they were building at Route 20, considering at Route 22, that drains very likely into Beck and Round Pond, which is very, very close to where our wells, to where our well comes from, the Round Pond wells that overflow into Gravelly. So that's a Scott Horsley more detailed examination and perhaps cooperation with Hamilton and Wenham to figure out more details about the aquifer that fills Gravelly Pond and the other wells in that area, which to me, and I think Scott agrees with this pretty wholeheartedly, is very different than those other wells that we were talking about on private lands in Manchester and south of 128. So the takeaway there in my mind is let's organize with Scott Horsley as to what we should do, how we should investigate that, and perhaps how we should cooperate with Hamilton and Wenham to figure out the aquifer there in the Beck Round Gravelly Pond area.
When is he going to provide a report or a review of the updated aquifer geography?
This is it. That's it. I don't know when that is.
Yeah, I know this is it. This is all part of that picture. That's correct. And we need that information to give us direction as to what we want to focus on, but I don't know when that's due.
Yes. Maybe you guys can help clarify. In my mind, I don't know how complete of a report we've requested as far as the aquifer goes. I know
We'll
one
find out
thing.
next week. He'll be at
What
the
was
meeting.
that?
We'll find out next week. He's at the meeting next week.
Yep, I know one thing for sure. Actively, the consulting group has monitored the inflow around Gravelly Pond at a approximate 5 to 10 foot depth below that high level of Gravelly Pond. I know because I helped them. And I actually went around the entire pond at 6 feet below the high level and stuck probes in all the way around and found 2 spots where water was cooler coming in. And I've done this in concert with Dana is her name, that consultant that they hired. And she's away for the next 2 weeks. So she got those preliminary numbers that we heard about at our last meeting. We have a lot more data now. But my point about all that is focused purely on the inflow of Gravelly Pond. Nothing really extensive about the aquifers in the whole, let's say, 10 square mile region there. So we need to talk with them more about that overall aquifer definition and flow.
Oh. We lost you.
I'm here. I just snapped off my video for a second because it keeps getting
All right.
blurry.
I don't know. I want to talk about the rates a little bit. I did some math. In fact, I looked at the billings that were, or the rates for all of the towns around, and Steve had gathered most of the information. And he sent it to me, and then I added a few things to it. Our rates are fairly close to what most of the other communities are. And I will say that they all structure things a little bit differently. Frankly, there's us and there's Hamilton, which has, tiered, like 5 or 6 tiers, and each tier costs a little bit more money. Everybody else, Gloucester has a flat rate, $9 for 100 cubic feet. They don't care how much you use. Beverly is the same thing. They're like $4 or something. It's, everybody's got a different arrangement. I know that Wenham has a rate for single family houses. And if you've got a multi-family house, their cutoffs are very different because they understand you're consuming more water. But I looked at it and I said, okay, for the average high user, and I'm looking at just the very high user here as really kind of a model. What do we do to perhaps encourage them, at least from a financial perspective? And they only pay in the summer an average of $1,300 a quarter. And these are the big users that use 150,000 gallons per year. And, you know, I doubled the rates going tier 4. I say, okay, what if we double the rates at tier 4? And then double that again for tier 5, and then double that again for tier 6. And all it did was it doubled their bill. Now, I don't know if that's enough for them to react, but a $1,300 bill becomes a $2,600 bill. Are they gonna care?
I don't think you'll ever get that answer until you do it.
Right,
I don't think they're gonna care. That's my impression.
all right.
Again, it's the top,
I don't think it'll get their attention because I don't know if those folks even look at their
I don't
bills.
think they see the bills.
I think somebody else is paying their bills.
and somebody else is also turning on their spigots. So they're not directly in charge of saving the water. They need to go to the Greenscapes program to make a difference.
Yeah, whoever's responsible, but I agree with Peter, you gotta try something and see who pays attention.
Didn't Scott Horsley say that when they put in the conservation rates in Katuitt, that their income went up because most of the people down there
And the
didn't
water use didn't change.
didn't react.
The water use didn't change, they got much more money. Now, we need money for meters, because that's one of the things that we want to do, so that's a plus. But I think we have to start somewhere, and I can send around a calculation that I kind of made. What the story is. The fact is as you increase your tiers and you go up to a higher tier, you're still paying the lower rate at the lower tiers, because it's only the higher tier that you're paying. So, you know, the first 10,000 gallons that you use, I don't care whether you're a big user or a small user, everybody's paying the same amount for the first 10,000 gallons. And then for the next 30,000, you're still everybody pays the same. So you got to get really high. So really changing the first 3 or 4 tiers, we don't need to do that. It doesn't make any difference. Because, and that is 90% of the people, they never see anything beyond tier 3. They just don't. So, you're only affecting, 200 or 300 people at the very top. And I don't even think it's a bell curve here. There are only 124 households in the highest tier. And those are the people that use 39 million gallons in a year. And so the average consumption there is 375,000 gallons per household per year. I use 26. So these people are using 15 times more.
You have 10 bathrooms in your household.
And I have an irrigation system. See, but I think those people, yeah, they have 15 bathrooms, but they're like 2 people living in the house.
Let me have some guests.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they're watering
I
the
will
lawn.
say their core use is still high, because you have to look at, Steve did break out what the winter usage was. And even if you break out that winter usage for those folks, they're using 23,000 gallons per quarter, 23,000 gallons. And, the most popular area, the largest area where most people are, they're using 9,000. So it's 9,000 versus 23. That's not a tremendous difference, but I can't believe those big houses have a lot more people in them than the category that is the most populous, which has 700 households in it. They're using 9,000 gallons a quarter. So
The difference is 14. If you multiply that by the
124.
124, how many gallons is that?
What 14? It's 14,000 times 100, so that's 140,000.
40,000 gallons.
We're talking 33 million though. It's not very much. If you break it out by quarter, the biggest users are using 23,000 gallons in each of the 2 winter quarters, and 133,000 gallons in each of the 2 summer quarters. 133 is what we want to get down to 75, something reasonable. If you cut it in half, I think we'd be happy with that. So, I will send around to everybody the math that I did on this, and my impression is that we just increased the top 2 or 3 tiers, double again, and see what happens. But again, for these big users, the average big user only goes from 1,300 to 2,600. Now that's the average one. Somebody who's well above the average in that group, their number probably will go up a lot more.
I have
We
two
need to
thoughts.
concern us. Oh, so go ahead, Jeff.
I have two thoughts. One, Steve has put a lot of thought into this, and I think he would suggest that everybody gets a rate increase, even the lower tier, because we're all in this together. I think we'll have to check with him.
Well, all of it goes up anyway. Every year it goes up 3 or 4%.
Yep. Well, anyway, I'm just trying to
So
represent him since he's not here.
Increasing that.
Yeah,
The
I'm
ones
just,
that, the smaller users, they're not really doing much in the way of irrigation because their use in the winter is equal to their use in the summer, which means they're not putting any water anywhere else.
Right.
And for the biggest group, it's 13 million gallons in the winter, 16 million gallons in the summer. They're using the same amount of water year round. So.
Yeah. Yep.
It's, I mean, everybody should try to conserve. You want that 13 and 16 maybe to go down to, I don't know, 10 and 12, but
Yeah, but really, we're talking about the rates here, so we have to, I don't know what, I just have one other, the second point that I wanted to make is, I think as a group, we need to suggest a new rate structure. So
yes,
maybe you could put forth the first suggestion of that.
I can do that. I can send that around and say, here's where we're at. I mean, we could jack up the rates right across the board. And then you have to say, well, are we just going to increase revenue?
Yeah, well, so
That's-
I think put forth a recommendation,
All right.
whatever it is. Don't sweat it too much, because Steve
Just
Steve
kind
will
of
have it.
ballpark sort of stuff.
Yep.
That it's more principles rather than specific numbers.
And to your point, John, you mentioned both are the same summer or winter.
Yeah,
There's no way for them to conserve.
well, yeah,
You flush the toilet
like,
less.
okay, yeah, what are you gonna do? You're gonna take a 3-minute shower instead of a 5-minute shower. Well, you and I already spoke about that.
Yep.
You don't need any more than 3. Maybe you got more surface. area. Maybe it's-
surface there, I go for the 5
All right.
Well, no, let's not mix conservation and your price point thing. I mean, maybe they're filling their swimming pool every quarter. I don't know. Maybe they want fresh water in there every 3 months.
So.
But what we're talking about is the pricing structure and how we might change that. And there's
Yeah, no, I
several,
mean, I looked at it and I thought about it a lot, and really, you have to focus on these people that use a lot more in the summer than the winter. That's where you're really gonna make a difference, and that's those top 2 tiers, the ones that use a lot more in the summer and the winter, and they're big volume users to begin with. And it's the top 2 boxes on the right. And if you get those people to respond, you're gonna reduce your water use by a lot in a hurry.
Did you go from 500 to 750 in the summer? Our average monthly use is 500,000 in the winter and 750,000.
What you mean for the big users?
No, just in general.
Just, I mean, where the category where most people are, the average use is 40,000 gallons per year, and they only use, it goes from 9,000 gallons per quarter in the winter to 11,000 gallons.
It's nothing.
No,
It's not much.
from 9,000 to 11,000. That's what those people are doing. Whereas the people in the biggest tier go from 23,000 to 133. That's, first of all, they're big numbers, and second of all, the jump is tremendous.
6%.
Yes.
But the
So
20,
the
the 20,
But for the biggest category, the people that, the people that use a little bit more in the summer and the winter, and they use less than 75,000 gallons a year. Over 40% of the town, the houses in town are in that category. 9,000 gallons in the winter, 11,000 gallons in the summer.
The ones that jump 6 times,
Yeah,
is that
that's
justification?
makes sense.
That justification to increase their rates by 6?
Yes, well, no, I would increase it, for each tier, I said the top 3 tiers. Double, whatever the number is in 3, then double it again in the next tier, and then double it again. So your top tier is 8 times higher.
So what you'd be doing is either A, they're gonna say to you, okay, it doesn't make any difference to me, I'm just gonna pay the bill.
Right.
B, the hell with you, excuse me, the heck with you. I'm gonna drill a well, and that's fine.
That's
because
fine.
That works for us anyways. And,
In most instances.
and 3, the third thing is.
So why don't
We'll
select board? No, not our problem.
we'll cut back somewhere,
Okay.
and maybe we won't run the sprinklers every day for 3 hours a day.
Cut it back 50%.
Yeah, we'll run them every other day.
We would like them to do
So,
that.
so we win in that
Right.
situation,
Right.
all 3.
Right. And this is what I think, and it's really those guys and those guys. That's where all of the volume of water is. And in the meantime, but it'll take us a few years to kind of find out this is how they're reacting.
The hardest part, I think, on this is going to be to recommend this to the select board. Have the select board think that this is a good idea, and then this finance committee has to come on board. Because it's the whole idea of how elastic
And
are
it's
those
inelastic.
rates, inelastic are the rates, and what happens if
Everybody says,
50% of your big users say,
shut off the
well,
water.
I'm gonna drill a well,
That's right.
all of a sudden, you've got a budget that's, for water that's set at a certain level. So, I mean, you really don't have. You have no facts or figures to base that on. You can't go, well, based on last year or the year before last, you can't do that.
And most of our water bill is fixed operational costs.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no.
So if you lose revenue, you're in trouble.
So
Have
that's
we-
that's a moving part.
Have we
And
discussed,
Scott said, where was it, in Cotuit? He did that.
To do it, yeah.
And
do it, yeah.
they just wound up with a whole lot more money.
has anybody considered or done in other towns raising the rate in summer?
Yes. Yeah, there is one community, there are a couple of communities that have summer rates.
Ipswich has, what's the rate?
Ipswich has a summer rate. Their summer rate is $27 per thousand gallons, and their winter rate is $9.
Maybe we could ask them if they have before and after data.
They end up having pretty expensive water. I think their average comes out to about $17 or $18, which is more than twice what we are.
I'm curious if they have before and after numbers that say raising the summer rates reduced summer consumption. And secondly, by the way, Ipswich should have some of the most expensive water.
Yeah,
The Ipswich, because the Ipswich River is completely overtapped. They have a real problem.
yeah.
They have a supply issue.
Correct.
What did you say that was 9 and 27, John?
And you can't sell from an empty
Yeah,
shelf,
let's
right?
see. Winter, 961.
Yeah. 2731, so, okay.
I'll send you this.
Okay,
So this is what, that's what the story is. But yeah, they have summer, winter. There's somebody else who has, I think, summer, winter. Maybe not. Maybe they were the only ones summer, winter. Yeah,
they have a lot of seasonal properties like out on Great Neck and Little Neck and stuff like that, so.
right. But you can look based on this grid. There are only a couple of that. See, we have tiers. That's us up here. We have tiers. Hamilton has tiers. Who else has got tiers? Cambridge has tiers. Nobody else, everybody else is like, look at this Gloucester, $9.47, I don't care how much you use, it's $9.47.
10 gallons or a million
10,000,
gallons.
yes, that's right. And Beverly, it's $4. Same thing. I don't care whether it's 1,000 gallons or a million gallons. $4 per 1,000 gallons.
See the size of that pond that they, or that lake that they have for the Salem Beverly Water Board, that's like.
Yeah, I think Beverly also has all other sources of water, by the way. That's one of them is.
Yeah, I think they do too. I think you're right. I want to, Chuck and Nate, I want them to put together kind of a grid so we know all of the towns around us, what they're doing with their water sources. And Chuck knows all of that. And you know, with regard to the NWRA, what is that task force that Chuck is on? That's
Some of the tires.
Senator,
Sanitize water resilience.
that's a major that,
That's
all of the information that we want to know, that group already knows.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of maybe
I
putting.
understand it took them years to agree on the mission statement. So I wouldn't worry about them doing anything.
No. But they gather the information. We don't have to gather this from scratch. We just have to get it.
All right, so I will work, you'll work on getting the map on these.
Yeah, I
out to
can
people.
do all of this.
I'll work and talking to Chuck. I will see if I can get these minutes out. Well, I write big, that's why they look like this a lot. I do,
It's the space.
I do.
What are we gonna do about this? We really should know on the private wells. What's in the aquifer and what?
Well, Steve is gonna have Gordon Turner send his map of where the plots are for the different private wells in town.
We really need to know that so that of the 90 wells, there are only 6 in the aquifer or 10 or whatever, but I know it's a pretty small number. And so we know what we need to be concerned about, if we need to be concerned. And as you said, it's an Eagle Scout project. If there are only 6 people to call, I mean, how much rejection?
I think it'll be the scout leaders at that
I
time.
think so.
Taking the rejections.
Wrong number.
Yeah, exactly. All right, anything else for the good of the order?
No, thank you.
Thanks for joining us,
Yeah,
Jeff.
yes, thanks, Jeff.
Say
You're
hi to
welcome.
your wife for me and talk to her about the water.
I've already texted her. We'll see what happens.
Give Jen my best.
All right, I will. Thank you,
All
guys.
right,
Yeah,
all right.
Bye-bye.
Steve moves, we adjourn, and it is 4:39.
4:39.
All right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Good.
You take those with the chairperson.
All those little brochures, a couple of them. I especially like the little summer thing.
I like this one, yeah, this
This
hits exactly.
on target. And I put that in the bill next, when the bills come out, February, May,
April and.
April,
August, I'm sorry.
August.
Ready, I'm gonna go out of this, so we're done with the meeting.